Before we dive in, I should say this wasn't just a day of filming for me. It was one of the most surreal, joyful, nerve-jangling days of my life. I was taken up onto the roof, an exclusive tour, and I absolutely did my best to play it cool. I'm terrified of heights in that perfectly reasonable way most humans are, yet there I was, climbing ladders with a camera in hand, standing above the Royal Albert Hall. Terrifying, exhilarating, completely unforgettable. I spent the afternoon in the archives, tucked beneath the building with a team of brilliant people who look after some of the hall's greatest treasures. Then I was given a full history tour. And later, after the audience from the Sigur Rós performance drifted out into the cold, Chris and I wandered the empty hall while the cleaners worked under those huge lights. I'd actually seen the band the night before from a press box, the perfect vantage point to watch not just the stage, but thousands of faces lifted toward it. I'm addicted to that sight, people lit up by music. It all felt like a tremendous honour. I might be a long way from ever selling out this place, 300 at Bush Hall last year versus 5,000 seats here. But dreams grow if you feed them. So I'll keep making music, keep uploading, keep working, and maybe one day I'll see you here. The Royal Albert Hall, Britain's most prestigious venue, created for the advancement of the arts and sciences, stands as an engineering marvel, a cultural powerhouse, and a striking tribute from Queen Victoria to the German prince whose name it carries. Its story is a testament to Victorian ambition, bold ideas made real through design, discipline, and a frankly outrageous amount of red velvet. The German idea of Gesamtkunstwerk means a total work of art, a synthesis of forms becoming something greater than the sum of their parts. The Royal Albert Hall fits that perfectly. The building itself is art and architecture, science and spectacle, all fused into one extraordinary space. And across its stage have passed some of the most influential cultural figures of the last century: Maya Angelou, Ella Fitzgerald, Nina Simone, Adele, Lianne La Havas, alongside the Beatles, Muhammad Ali, Albert Einstein, Bob Dylan, the Suffragettes, Winston Churchill, and Eric Clapton, who has played here more than 200 times. Today, the hall presents over 360 events a year: comedy, classical, contemporary, circus, even sumo wrestling, welcoming more than 1.6 million people through its doors. I'm Mary Spender, singer-songwriter and filmmaker, and I've dreamed of playing this venue since I was a teenager. When Chris from the Royal Albert Hall team heard that it was my bucket list stage, he invited me to come and film. I spent a full day and then long into the night after the audience had gone home, exploring what really happens behind the scenes 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In this documentary, we're going behind the curtain of the Royal Albert Hall, its history, its legacy, and the people who make the magic happen.
Hello Mary. My name is Mandy Komlosi and I'm a guide here at the Royal Albert Hall.
What is your absolute favourite part of the history of this hall?
I would say Prince Albert's part in it. He was an extraordinary man. I would say not very liked when he first came to the country. At the time when Albert comes over, late 1840s, we were going through a very difficult time in England. We'd had a few kings that we weren't keen on. We were also going through something called the Industrial Revolution. Sounds boring, wasn't, but what it meant was we were changing the way we had worked for 1,000 years. So we were going from working by hand, little things, making little things, working on the land, to machines. So it's a very frightening time, but add into that mix a few wars, a little bit of famine. And so Queen Victoria was our hope for the future. And she marries this obscure German prince. And we said as a nation, who is he? Has he got any money? Not really. Has he got any power? Not really. So we were quite distrustful, however. We changed very quickly by the time we got to know him. He was quite extraordinary. He was a great reformist, he had fantastic ideas, and one of his great ideas was to host a great exhibition that was actually in Hyde Park in 1851.
Our story begins in 1851 at the Great Exhibition in London, the first international showcase of industry, art and science. It was organised by Prince Albert and his brilliant collaborator Henry Cole and housed inside Joseph Paxton's vast glass and iron crystal palace, built in just 9 months. Over 6 million people visited in half a year, a third of Britain's population, drawn by cheap tickets and new railway fares. More than 13,000 objects were displayed, from early photography to telescopes to the Koh-i-Noor diamond. Financially, it was a triumph, raising £186,000, about £28 million today. Albert was the driving force. As Prince Consort, he was a man who refused to settle into ceremonial duties. He fought for education reform, the abolition of slavery worldwide, and better conditions for working people. As Chancellor of Cambridge, he modernised the curriculum. As President of the Royal Society of Arts, he pushed for innovation and public access to knowledge. He wanted Britain to celebrate human ingenuity, not just its empire, and the exhibition became the blueprint. Using the profits, land was purchased at Kensington Gore for a new cultural district nicknamed Albertopolis by the press. Albert envisioned a place where art and science would sit side by side for the public good. Museums, colleges, performance spaces. Today, the area includes the V&A, the Science Museum, the Natural History Museum, and the Royal Albert Hall. Okay, this is an absolutely spectacular honour, being on the rooftop of the Albert Hall. I mean, look where I am, guys. This is amazing.
Hi, I'm Rhiannon Bromley-Beer. I'm the Deputy Health and Safety Manager here at the Royal Albert Hall. Welcome to our amazing flat roof. I'm going to take you around before we go up into the dome for the main highlight. We're currently on the south side of the building. To our left, we've got the Albert Mansions. As we start going round, you'll start seeing the whole area, which is called Albertopolis because of Prince Albert and the work he did in this area.
Albert never saw it completed. He died in 1861 at just 42 after years of stomach pain, possibly abdominal cancer. Queen Victoria was devastated. She withdrew and wore black for the rest of her life, but she continued his vision. Henry Cole carried on the work, commissioning architect Francis Folk in 1864 to design a 7,000-seat hall for concerts, lectures, and scientific gatherings.
And then on the north side, we've got this lovely view of the parks, so Hyde Park and Kensington Gardens, and the Albert Memorial. Unfortunately, before the hall was built, Prince Albert died, and Victoria, the grief she was in, spent all the money that was meant to go on building the hall on building that memorial to her husband instead. And that is why we have members at the hall, because in order to raise the funds again, seats in our auditorium were sold to members. I can't remember the price, but they were sold a lease for 999 years. So that's where their money went towards. And that's why we still have members today.
Wow.
Yeah.
So she blew it all.
She blew it all on that. And apparently it's as deep as it is tall, the foundations for that memorial, because of the weight of it. Pretty crazy.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay, I never knew that.
To avoid slow government funding, Cole introduced seat leasing, 999-year private seat ownership. It worked. A fifth of the seats, 1,268, are still privately owned today, allowing the hall to operate without public subsidy. Victoria herself bought 20 seats, combined into what is now the Royal Box.
Every single seat from here is a good view. But also what you might notice is it's off-centre. Can you see that? And that's because Queen Victoria chose her seats off prospectus and she wanted to be closer to the stage. It kind of makes sense because you would expect it to be in the middle, you know, like at the Royal Opera House or something like that, and all other theatres in the world.
The first stone was laid by the Queen in a groundbreaking ceremony on the 20th of May, 1867, with a crowd of 7,000 gathering to mark the occasion. She announced, "It is my wish that this hall should bear his name to whom it will have owed its existence and be called the Royal Albert Hall of Arts and Sciences." An orchestra performed Albert's own composition, Invocation to Harmony. In a touching diary entry of the day, Queen Victoria, fighting to keep control of her emotions, recalled how shy Albert had been about anyone hearing his composition, one that she had helped him notate and even sung parts of.
Well, so Mary, welcome once again, and we are in the Royal Retiring Room. Now, this room is very important actually because, of course, the royal family are not going to stay in the royal box during the interval. And this is because you've got 5,500 people staring at you. Also, this is a lovely place to come and just have a nice drink. I mean, I never know what I'm going to get, I must admit, when I come in here with groups, other tour groups, because the royal family could have been here the night before. So I'm not saying it would be a mess, but I mean, it might look a little bit different. In fact, we had very, very important visitors here the other night because we had the Grand Ole Opry, which was pretty amazing. So we had a lot of, plants and a few bits of, champagne. It looked fantastic. But what we see in this room are our royal patrons in order of when they looked after the hall. So our king, King Charles III, has become the next patron. Now, he's not been very well recently, so he's only just signed the papers. We knew he was going to be royal patron, of course. He's been coming here since he was tiny, but it's rather wonderful to have him. And of course, he is such a huge patron of the arts that it just fits so nicely. Going back to Queen Victoria, we see her here, and what's interesting about this image is that she's signed it. Now, she never signed images of herself, but she's signed this. Why has she done that? Because it's to go into the Royal Retiring Room. And she's doing anything for her dear, beloved husband, who had passed away 10 years before this building was opened. If you remember the date, 1871.
The hall's founding ideal, uniting art and science, needed a building with that same experimental spirit. That responsibility first fell to Francis Folk, architect, engineer and captain in the Royal Engineers. Born in Belfast and trained at Woolwich, he spent a decade abroad before returning to design major civic buildings, including parts of the South Kensington Museum, now the V&A. Like many Royal Engineers, he brought military precision into public architecture, blending Renaissance ideas with materials like iron and terracotta. He was also an inventor, a bellows camera, a portable rubber bath, a military fire engine, a man who lived, as Henry Cole put it, beyond the beaten path of conventionalism. Folk died suddenly in 1865, also at the age of 42, and his plans were completed by Major General Henry Scott, another gifted engineer. Scott refined the structure and added the most ambitious feature, the Great Iron Dome, the largest unsupported dome in the world at the time. Construction was monumental, over 6 million bricks, 80,000 terracotta blocks, and more than 1.6 million cubic feet of earth excavated.
Oh, wow.
Ta-da!
Oh my God, it's absolutely magical up here. Oh, wow.
Welcome to the dome. Because of all the glass, it basically is like a greenhouse up here.
Yeah.
In the hottest summer months, we have recorded air temperatures of 60 degrees and the metalwork gets to 80 degrees. So for things like the proms.
That's just dangerous, isn't it, at that point?
Yeah, dangerous. So if any work does have to be done, it's short, sharp intervals with lots of regular breaks. But most of the time, the staff will do any work that needs doing overnight. Glass dome and the metalwork was originally built in Manchester to check that it all worked well. And then when they were happy with the design, it got taken apart again, brought down on horse and carriage and rebuilt here. There is not a nut, bolt, screw, anything holding it to the main body of the building. It is the sheer weight of it that keeps it in place. So after they built it, they knocked away the wooden foundations, and apparently the whole building dropped by about 1/2 inch just because of the weight of the roof. So again, at that point, no electricity in the building. So it was just the glass dome straight down into the auditorium, and it was the natural light that lit the auditorium. Once gas lighting and things were introduced, then they put a black drape to stop the light from coming through, basically. But at that point, we still had lots of posh people in the auditorium, and the ladies started complaining that dust was falling down onto their expensive dresses. And so another idea had to be rethought. And so that is when the valerian was put in. So that's this double skinned aluminium. So when you look up from the auditorium, you can see that shape repeated in the roof. So that is the valerian. So the other thing with the glass is the only reason it's not an actual greenhouse in here is that none of the glass is sealed, because if it would start raining in here, basically. So all of the glass is just placed into the runners that you can see. And then any water that comes in will go out of those runners and down to the drains outside.
Wow.
But in the last few years, we had a project that basically removed every piece of glass, cleaned it, replaced it if needed, because basically there was such a lot of moss build-up that the runners weren't working anymore. And all of these lovely yellow circles you can see everywhere, in each of those was a bucket where we were collecting water that wasn't going out through the runners, but was instead coming down. So that was a whole big project.
So when was that done?
I think that finished early last year. So yeah,
Oh,
like
right.
2-3 years ago. Yeah,
So up until then.
very, very recent.
Yes. I love, like, when you think of the gravitas with each performance and everything, and actually what's going on up above it.
But there's actually yellow buckets everywhere. That are collecting.
Just holding it together. I mean, that's amazing.
No, I mean, the Victorians did a very good job of designing this, but obviously 150 years old, there's going to be some bits that need tweaking.
The dome weighs 338 tonnes with another 279 tonnes of glazing. On 11th of May 1869, Scott personally removed the final supports after clearing the building. The dome settled by just 3/4 of a centimetre, the tiny controlled shift engineers expect when a structure finally takes its own weight for the first time. A perfect result. Outside, the hall carries one of its most remarkable artistic statements, the Triumph of Art and Letters, a 244-metre terracotta frieze showing artists, engineers, musicians, teachers and workers from every nation. Royal Academy artists designed the imagery, but the mosaics were completed by women students from the South Kensington Museum, a remarkable contribution, often forgotten. Terracotta, rarely used in London at the time, proved ideal, affordable, mass-producible from moulds, and resistant to the city's thick industrial pollution. Its intentionally rough texture reflected Prince Albert's belief that craftsmanship and manufacturing deserved celebration as much as the fine arts.
So I'm just looking at the Albert Memorial, which is so beautiful, and actually it is real gold. 23 karat gold, get over yourselves. But it is an extraordinary piece. It took about 12 years to make. George Gilbert Scott is the architect. Albert himself wouldn't have liked it, and I tell you why. 2 big reasons. One, he said in his will, no memorials. And of course, they're all over England. And there's another one pretty similar to that if you've been to Edinburgh. But also it's not his style. This building is his style. This building is what we would call the Renaissance Revival style, and that is definitely the Gothic Revival style. So it's that kind of perpendicular, this idea of, something reaching up to heaven. The Victorians felt that this kind of style was absolutely perfect for important memorials like this, but also important buildings. So if you visited London, you might go to the Houses of Parliament, And you have to remember those are modern. They are modern, but they're 1844 or something. But you have to remember they're in a style. This is 1,000 years old. The Gothic style is 1,000 years old. And I think Albert today would just be so happy about how this building is still being used. And we talked a little bit about very important events that happened here. 1999, we had a concert for Linda McCartney, and we had great artists came to perform at that. We had George Michael here, we had Sinead O'Connor. Now, Sinead O'Connor was one of the first artists to actually get involved in our Elgar Room workshops. So she was fantastic about that. We had Elton John here. I mean, the times he's been here is extraordinary. Eric Clapton, by the way, has performed here 223 times. I mean, this is an extraordinary record. Then another concert that was very important in 2002 was the concert for George Harrison. Now, George Harrison's son actually played at that. You couldn't tell the two apart. I mean, he looks so similar. It was a fantastic evening, and we were talking earlier about this, and Monty Python, of course, performed at that as well.
But a building like this is never truly finished. Over the decades, the hall has been constantly modernised. Electric lighting, new boilers, updated dressing rooms, an underground loading bay, improved seating, all installed while the hall remained open for hundreds of events each year. Much of the work still happens overnight, a rhythm the staff have mastered with almost military efficiency. And one upgrade became essential: the sound. Acoustics was still a young science in 1871, and the hall's vast dome produced a notorious echo, the only place, people joked, where a composer could hear his work twice. Scott himself admitted that acoustics, like strategy, was simple in theory, but quite another affair in practice. A sailcloth awning was hung below the dome, but nothing solved the problem until 1969, when sound engineer Kenneth Shearer installed 135 fiberglass acoustic diffusers, the famous mushrooms.
What? No.
Oh, it's very dark, so you can't actually see. So at this level, we're just above the mushrooms. Because it's very dark, you can't see, but the stage and the organ are just to the left of us at the moment.
Yeah, I can definitely see those mushrooms.
The BBC Symphony Orchestra tested them that January. They worked.
Okay, guys, I'm going to be real with you. I'm not great with heights, like most people are not great with heights. So I am going to be a brave girl and manage this. But let's see what it's all about.
So just mind this cable as you're coming up. When we first go out there, you'll be stepping onto a trapdoor. Don't worry, it only opens upwards. That is completely solid when you step out onto that.
Okay.
Once you go past that, it's kind of like walking on a trampoline.
Oh my God.
But
Okay.
you are absolutely fine.
I just don't feel like I'm confident enough for that.
All right, I'm going to take my first steps.
I've walked on an anechoic chamber before. Oh my God, okay, right. I do see. It's like the little wires are like moving underneath you, but you can bounce on it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'm cool as a cucumber.
Ooh. Oh my God.
In 2019, a £2 million sound system with 465 individual speakers was added, installed entirely at night to avoid interrupting performances. Then there is the organ, once the largest in the world with 9,999 pipes. Designed by Henry Willis, it weighs 150 tons and stands 70 feet tall. It has been rebuilt several times, and in 1914 it was even sabotaged by suffragettes who flooded the pipes as part of their campaign for women's voting rights. Just one of many dramatic moments in the hall's long life.
This has been the royal entrance since 1914. Who's in charge of us? That's going to be George V and his Queen, Queen Mary. People always ask me where these stairs go. They go to the royal loo. No, it's not gold. It's just a normal loo. Often we hear, this is all closed off, but talking of those ghosts, often we hear footsteps. There's no one there. We know there isn't.
Have you, be honest with me, have you heard
Well,
them?
I don't. I don't
What?
mind.
No, that
There's
you're
no one there.
joking.
No,
There's no one there.
Nope, they can't be on this side either.
No, you're messing with me.
Stop.
You're messing with me.
Stop it. So there's like two little girls, there's an old gentleman, but you see, I was told that it was Queen Victoria's mother, the Duchess of Kent. Now, she's also the ghost at Buckingham Palace, so she must get the tube. I don't know. I don't know how else she's flying, I suppose. But sometimes you feel like feathers on your face, you know, feathers, or you might even get a boot in your back. So it's interesting. It doesn't bother me, stuff like that, but it's interesting.
Albertopolis wasn't built in a single sweep, and you can see its layers from the rooftop. Just a stone's throw away sits the Royal College of Organists, its own building completed in the 1870s, a reminder that this whole area grew into a kind of cultural ecosystem with music at its core.
So right in front of us, we've got the Royal College of Music, and then beyond that, you've got Imperial College, and you can just about see the turrets of the Natural History Museum and the V&A. So all of this area is filled of wonderful cultural buildings. Yeah, this whole area is great. So beyond here, we've also got our south steps. So we'll have red carpet events, all sorts going on down here for the building itself. So we've also got our chimney. So that's also part of the Grade 1 listed building that you can see from up here.
Wow.
So it's nice that you can see the Victoria Tower, which is part of Imperial College. So the scaffolding has started coming down there. So you've got a nice view of that. Royal College of Organists in this building.
Oh, wow.
So really ornate front, as you can see. And another claim to fame in that it is the front door of Mr. Selfridge's on the ITV programme.
Oh.
So quite regularly the road would be cleared of cars and the markings covered up, and they'd get some old-fashioned cars coming in, and they'd have all the actors outside, but knock on the door, and then someone shouts cut, and then they go to a studio somewhere to do the internal parts. But yeah, a really interesting building. Apparently there's an organ in there that spans 3 floors. I mean, I guess you need that if you're the Royal College of Organists. And a lovely rooftop garden, which I've never seen anyone on, which seems like a waste to me.
Oh, that is beautiful, isn't it? God, in this part of London as well.
Yeah. So normally we have, about 80,000 bees up here, and we make our own honey, which we sell in our shop. Well, I say we make it. So it's the London Honey Company kind of look after that for us, and then we sell it in our shop. Lovely, I will say. So last college we've got near us is the Royal College of Art. This building, which the now King Charles, when he was the Prince of Wales, said was one of his least favourite buildings in London. So when that building was built, they specifically got that colour brick to match the Royal Albert Hall. Oh. So at that point, the hall had already been here for about 100 years, had already built up 100 years worth of London soot, grime, pollution. So they specifically got bricks that colour, and then I think it was about 10, 15 years later, we had our first deep clean of the building and revealed our lovely orange brickwork. Yes. And I think the architect of that building probably went, oops.
Oh.
Yeah. So that is why that building is that colour. But I guess more on the brickwork as well, because they were running out of money, in construction of the hall. That's why our bricks turned from the lovely, expensive orange bricks down to the nastier yellow bricks, because you can't see that when you're outside on the pavement.
Of course.
So that's why the terracotta stops as well and doesn't go all the way around the arches. Those clever Victorians, money-saving hacks.
Absolutely.
From the peak of the dome to the arena floor is 135 feet. During the First World War, this drop was used to calculate how long propaganda leaflets would take to fall from aircraft. Draped in black during air raids, the hall survived both world wars with only minor damage.
So,
oh wow, okay.
You are currently 43.5 metres above the arena floor.
That's quite far.
That's
43
quite far.
metres.
And as you can see from this point, the mushrooms are actually quite far down.
really far down,
Yeah.
actually. But I understand that they are about 40 kilos. 40 kilos
Yeah, it
each?
depends on the size of them, but yes.
Yeah. Wow.
So they're actually about a third of the way down, whereas when you're looking up from the auditorium, it looks like they're right at the top of the roof.
It does.
So definitely an optical illusion there.
Oh my God. Okay, right.
And the other thing is that you'll feel it's a lot cooler in here compared
It
to
is.
outside in the dome area. And that's basically the Victorians being very clever. They've basically designed a natural airflow in here. So that's why we have that breeze coming through here. And the top bit we call the oculus.
Yeah.
So those windows are open at the moment, which is why we have that breeze coming through.
I don't think I've ever had such a magical flooring in a video, ever. Oh my God.
With the building complete, the Royal Albert Hall needed performance to bring it to life, and from the very beginning it became a home for the full spectrum of human creativity. Given Prince Albert's deep love of classical music, it's fitting that Handel's Messiah was the first major work performed here in June 1871. It has returned almost every year since, sung by a choir of more than 400 voices and heard by more than 5 million people. The hall's classical pedigree is extraordinary. Verdi, Dvorak and Elgar all conducted their own works here. Elgar's Pomp and Circumstance became the unofficial soundtrack of The Proms, a series designed to bring music to the masses with affordable tickets. When the Queen's Hall was bombed during the Second World War, the Proms moved here and have remained ever since. The hall has also honoured tragedy. On the 24th of May 1912, Elgar conducted a memorial concert for Titanic bandleader Wallace Hartley and his musicians, performed by a super orchestra drawn from 7 London ensembles, including players who had been booked on the Titanic but changed their travel plans at the last moment. The hall's rock and pop history is just as deep. It's one of the few venues where the Beatles and Rolling Stones appeared on the same bill.
Hi, I'm Rona. I'm the Senior Archivist here at the Royal Albert Hall. Welcome to the archives.
I'm Hope, and I have the pleasure of being the archivist at the Royal Albert Hall.
This is a very, very special item in our collection. This is the Great Pop Proms in 1963. And the reason this is such a special programme is because it's one of a handful of times where the Rolling Stones and the Beatles played together on the same night. What's really interesting about it is the Beatles were kind of quite well known at the time. They'd had hits like Please Please Me and Twist and Shout, but the Rolling Stones, on the other hand, were a little less well known. And we've got a lovely kind of bit of bio in the programme to describe them, which says, "We're sure you'll give this madly exciting group the same tumultuous hearing they've already had all over London and the home counties." So they were sort of not as well known. What's really fantastic as well is we got donated this lovely photograph of the Beatles by a fan who was at the gig at the time. We think it was probably taken before the gig because they were chased off by 6,000 screaming girls into a taxi at the end of the gig. So this is kind of just before, and you've got Ringo holding the album Please Please Me, Paul signing an autograph, and it's a kind of lovely kind of capture a moment before what became a really insane career.
Legends like Billie Holiday, Frank Sinatra, Janis Joplin, Rihanna and Adele have stood under the dome. During Bob Dylan's 1966 UK tour, he famously crossed the line from folk to electric. At a Manchester date in May, the crowd yelled "Judas" at him when his band kicked in. The recording of that show mysteriously circulated under the title Live at the Royal Albert Hall, despite being at Manchester's Free Trade Hall, simply because the hall's name carried legendary weight.
Joan Baez and Bob Dylan, who had quite sort of concurrent careers, both made their hall debut the same year, 1965. This is the Joan Baez 1965 programme, which is really gorgeous. It's got that kind of classic mid-60s look to it. This is the 1966 Bob Dylan programme, but he also performed here in 65. 65, he did a kind of dream Bob Dylan set list where He did The Times Are Changing, It Ain't Me, Babe, and a couple of other just amazing acoustic ones. Funnily enough, I don't think he did Blowing in the Wind. I think maybe he'd already started to go off it by that point. But this programme is from the 66 gig, and this is where he famously went electric in the second half.
Here we've got a programme from the Jimi Hendrix Experience debut album performance at the Hall, and it was kind of 1966, obviously, when Jimi Hendrix came over to the UK. And within months had formed the Jimi Hendrix Experience, and a year later they get invited to play at the Hall alongside The Move, the Pink Floyd, as they were known then, and the Amen Corner, amongst others. And it, that would have been an amazing gig to be at. And it kind of went down really well in the newspapers. Enemy described it as an electroplasm of sound, and kind of interestingly, the Pink Floyd were also there, but the original lineup with Syd Barrett, but in the audience watching was David Gilmour.
At the kind of mid-60s, tail end of the 60s, there's a real rise in rock and pop at the Albert Hall. As we've seen some like pretty iconic gigs with Jimi Hendrix, and then people like Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, The Who, Deep Purple start playing here. And it becomes kind of increasingly problematic for the Hall. One of the reasons is that at the time we didn't have professionally sort of employed stewards. It was called the Honorary Corps of Stewards, and it was basically guys mostly retired from the military or were like working in a bank and wanted something to do on their evenings who were acting as the stewards. So when they were faced with like high 17-year-olds getting really, really excited about incredible like psychedelic rock, they were really, really struggling, and quite a lot of damage was being caused to the Hall. And bands, of course, were like riling up their audiences as you would in a rock and pop band, and the Hall was like, people are getting out of their seats, they're standing up, they're dancing in the halls, in the corridors, outrageous. It all kind of came to a head in this gig, which was a charity gig for kind of political prisoners of the apartheid in South Africa, and the Nice played there alongside like Julie Felix, and Dick Gregory was supposed to be there, but he was incarcerated at the time, so couldn't make it. Marlon Brando was also supposed to be there and just didn't show up. But the Nice did this incredible thing, which was they played America from West Side Story, but with like heavy guitar and keyboard, and they burnt an American flag on stage. And so this caused absolute outrage. I mean, I think there was articles in the Daily Telegraph like, we can't, have people burning flags of a nation with who we're trying to be friendly. And there's loads of correspondence about this. So with regard to their producer, his behaviour was appalling throughout the day and culminated, as I later discovered, in physical assault, which might have had serious consequences. And so apparently the Nice were kind of kicking off, and their bookings agent was getting told off as well. As I explained to you on the telephone, I did not consider that you were directly responsible for the disgraceful incident which occurred. I cannot help feeling that it would have been very appropriate for you to have publicly disassociated yourself. The Nice were then banned as well. So that started this idea that perhaps rock and pop was more trouble than it was worth. Then in 1971, Frank Zappa's gig was cancelled just a few days before the concert. And Zappa actually took the Hall to court. So there's loads of press coverage about this. I particularly enjoy No Muck at the Albert Hall. And there's loads of coverage on the fact that the Hall objected to the fact that a four-letter word was going to be used. 80 members of the orchestra were going to have to shout a four-letter word, so that was deemed inappropriate for the Hall. Zappa had also just made a documentary where he really showed this kind of rock and roll lifestyle and quite like destructive behaviour, and so the lettings agent was disinclined to let him perform. It also we got this absolutely fantastic press cutting, which is "What is a groupie?" asked his lordship, which happened during the trial. Zappa looking very cheeky.
Rock was briefly banned in 1972 after enthusiastic fans caused structural damage, but it returned in the 80s. Another fixture is the Teenage Cancer Trust concerts, launched by Roger Daltrey in 2000 and still running today, raising over £32 million for specialist care.
This is a really special programme. This is 1989, The Who performing Tommy, their well-known rock opera, at the Hall. They were actually meant to perform Tommy in 1972 as part of one of Princess Margaret's charities, with Rod Stewart in it and Sandy Denny. However, because of the rock and pop ban, they were refused. However, the ban, after the ban was lifted in 1989, the Who returned to play Tommy, and this was really momentous gig. We've got Eric Idle, Patti LaBelle playing the Acid Queen. We've got Elton John playing the Pinball Wizard. So really kind of really big gig. Years and years later, in I think it was 2015, when the Who was playing a 50-year anniversary for the Teenage Cancer Trust, they were presented with a kind of mock, cheeky kind of apology from the Hall for banning them, kind of saying, you're welcome back anytime.
In keeping with Albert's vision, the Hall became a centre for learning and public debate. It has hosted rallies, demonstrations, and some of the world's most important thinkers and leaders: Churchill, Einstein, Hawking, Garvey, Mandela, the Dalai Lama. In 1872, audiences here witnessed one of the first major demonstrations of long-distance Morse code, communication across 5,000 miles. In 1919, sisters Eglantine Jebb and Dorothy Buxton held a fundraiser to help children suffering in post-war Europe. Their efforts founded Save the Children. The suffragettes held rallies here too, including the famous 1908 event where Helen Ogston used a whip to defend herself while being forcibly removed from the stage. 60 years later, feminist protesters disrupted the Miss World pageant, throwing smoke bombs and shouting, "We're not beautiful, we're not ugly, we're angry." The Hall's versatility is part of its magic. It has hosted boxing, tennis, indoor marathons, sumo wrestling, and mass yoga, film premieres, ceremonies, and some gloriously odd gatherings. Between 1892 and 1913, 30,000 children from poor backgrounds received free dolls at the Truth Doll and Toy Show, the largest doll event in the world, equal parts heartwarming and mildly chilling. Lady Malcolm's Servants' Ball of the 1930s gave London's domestic workers a rare night of freedom, complete with costumes, dancing, and a thriving queer underground that persisted despite the "no men dressed as ladies" rule printed on the tickets. And the Chelsea Arts Club annual ball, once described as the most scandalous night in the social calendar, filled the hall with Egyptian gods, Noah's Ark floats, and elaborate papier-mâché creations that were ritualistically destroyed after midnight. The final straw came in 1958 when a smoke bomb on the dance floor forced management to call time on the tradition. I had a realization when I was with the archives team. It must be extraordinary to work in a place where history doesn't just sit on shelves, it keeps happening every single night. That's why the work they do matters so much. Someone has to catch these moments as they fall, to document every show, every artist, every little piece of magic before it disappears. For all its history and spectacle, the Royal Albert Hall is far more than a place for great performances. Its real power lives in the work it does every single day beyond the spotlight. Alongside the concerts, the Hall runs a year-round outreach programme, youth music sessions, community choirs, creative workshops, Albert's band bringing live music into schools and hospitals, and training projects supporting young people through organisations like the Teenage Cancer Trust. The team here spend as much time giving music away as they do hosting the world's biggest names. That's the part of the story that doesn't always make the headlines, but it's absolutely central to what the Hall stands for. What you've seen here is only a fraction of the extraordinary moments that have unfolded inside these walls. The engineering, the art, the activism, the wild nights, the heartbreak, and the triumphs. For me, it's been a genuine privilege to spend time behind the scenes, to meet the people who keep this place alive, and to understand just how much care and craft goes into every single day. I hope you've enjoyed this look behind the curtain. And if you've never visited the Royal Albert Hall, maybe this is your nudge. Have a browse through their listings, pick something that sparks your curiosity, and come experience it for yourself. There truly is something for everyone.
I have to say a very special thank you to the team at the Royal Albert Hall for having me, particularly Chris, who helped organise this whole thing, and then to everyone who showed me around today. You're all absolutely wonderful and special, and really just gave me so much excitement and adrenaline and joy and history and education on this incredible venue. So yeah, maybe one day I might end up playing here, but we'll see. A lot of hard work to do. I'm vlogging now, just getting other people to do the hard work instead of me having to be on camera. This is amazing. And look, I'm jumping. There we go. I am actually jumping. It might just look like the camera is just going like that. It is currently 1 a.m, but let's fast back to earlier in the day. That doesn't make sense, does it? Fast back. It's 1 a.m, guys.